In 1928, Walt Disney created Mickey Mouse. Steamboat Willie was then created to show Mickey and Minnie Mouse to America for the first time. Steamboat Willie was Walt Disney's first animated cartoon with sound. It was inspired by The Jazz Singer, which was one of the first talkies. In 1929, Walt Disney created the Silly Symphony series, which made technological breakthroughs such as continuous movements and frolicking fish. They were released in Technicolor, which was a brand new color technique that Walt had the right to for 2 years. In 1930, Pluto appears for the first time in the Mickey Mouse cartoon, The Chain Gang. The Silly Symphony, called Flowers and Trees, was created in 1932, which was the first film to use Technicolor, which was granted to Disney by the United Artists for 2 years. Flowers and Trees eventually wins Disney's first Academy Award for cartoon short. In 1933, the 36th Silly Symphony, called The Three Little Pigs, was created. Many Americans related it to the Great Depression, and the national rally becomes, "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf?"
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf?
In 1934, Donald Duck makes his first appearance in the Silly Symphony named The Wise Little Hen. And in 1937, Donald Duck gets his own series of short films. On December 21st, 1937, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is shown to the public in Los Angeles, California. It grossed $8 million and won an Academy Award, which was shocking during the time of the Great Depression, which had a large amount of unemployment. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was mostly successful because it appealed to children. Snow White is portrayed as the typical submissive housewife that needs a man to make her happy. This film allowed Disney to pay off all his loans. In 1940, Pinocchio was released. The profits were below expectations because World War II cut off European and Asian markets overseas. Pinocchio taught children the benefits of hard work, middle-class values, and to not lie to their parents. In 1940, Fantasia was also released, but didn't make any profits because of the same reasons. Also in 1940, Dumbo is released and makes a profit of $850,000. Despite its major success, Dumbo was a very racist film. Dumbo is different from every other elephant because of his big ears, and he is ridiculed, which during the time symbolizes the treatment of African Americans in the U.S. society. At the beginning of the movie, faceless black men with no individual identities are setting up the circus, which shows how blacks are still segregated and considered inferior, which makes sense as the film was created before the Civil Rights Movement. As a result of the New Deal programs between 1933 and 1938, workers created more labor unions to protect their rights in the workplace. On May 29, 1941, picket lines formed in front of Walt Disney Studios led by union leader Herb Sorrell. In 1941, the draft for the war took 1/3 of Walt's artists. The U.S. Army moved onto the Disney lot, and government contracts required him to make patriotic and educational films. For example, in the short film Donald Duck Tells You to Pay Your Taxes, audiences are encouraged to pay their taxes to help support the war effort against the Nazis.
Something you don't need is a dollar spent to help the Axis.
In 1942, Bambi is released with a disappointing turnout. Initially, many Americans saw it as an insult to huntsmen, and it also created the Bambi effect, which sparked people's interest in animal rights. Bambi was later released in 1957 to earn a greater profit. In 1946, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Bambi, and Dumbo played in Europe, but no profits were made due to the war-damaged economy. In that same year, Mickey and the Beanstalk was released, which was the last time the voice of Mickey Mouse was portrayed by Walt Disney. In 1950, Cinderella is released and was the first hit for Disney Studios since Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In the movie, marriage is seen as the life goal, and the women belong in the home. In the 1950s, women were confined to the role of the housewife, which is portrayed in Cinderella. This ideal woman was promoted by similar movies and TV shows of the 50s. In 1951, Alice in Wonderland is completed. It unfortunately was a disappointment in London and America, losing $1 million. It was adapted from British writer Lewis Carroll's books Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Literary critics accused Disney of Americanizing a great work of English literature. However, it gained popularity in the 70s due to the drug culture of the time. In 1954, the TV show series Davy Crockett profits almost $2.5 million. In addition, over 10 million raccoon skin hats were sold, caused by the age of consumerism of the 1950s. In 1955, Lady and the Tramp is released in the U.S. This was the first cartoon-featured film in CinemaScope and processed in Technicolor. Lady and the Tramp was released after the Korean War when Asian stereotypes were rampant in the U.S., seen when the Siamese cats dance to an Asian soundtrack and have bad English.
We are Siamese, if you please.
In 1961, 101 Dalmatians is released and was inspired by the baby boom with lots of children, which is symbolized as dogs in the movie. In 1964, Mary Poppins premieres in Hollywood and is nominated for 13 Academy Awards. On December 15, 1966, Walt Disney sadly dies. In 1967, the Jungle Book movie is created. The main character, Mowgli, has authority over the animals, the natives, because he's a human, which is a symbol of imperialism and colonialism. Baloo, Mowgli's friend who's a bear, lacks intellect and how he's only capable of instructing Mowgli on how to use the bare necessities of life or natural resources, symbolizing the American colonial view towards the uncivilized Vietnamese. On October 1st, 1971, Walt Disney World opens with Magic Kingdom being the only park. In 1982, Epcot opens representing Walt's idea of the future world. In 1983, Disney Channel appears on cable television. On May 1st, 1989, MGM Studios opens as a dedication to Hollywood. In 1989, The Little Mermaid was shown to the public. Ariel, the main character, becomes the ideal woman when she gives up her voice with no intelligence or words, and her body becomes all she is, which is continuing the tradition of women being submissive to men. In 1991, Beauty and the Beast was made. It teaches young audiences that inner beauty is more important than outer beauty, and it is okay to be different and unique. In 1992, Aladdin was created. The lack of female characters in the film, Jasmine was the only main female character, makes the Middle East appear as hostile to women. When women were present, they were sexualized in historically inaccurate belly dancer costumes. The film was created after the end of the Gulf War in 1991, and the genie symbolized the U.S. as the liberator to the Arabs in the Middle East from their backwards culture. Disney goes on to create many movies such as Lion King in 1994, Pocahontas in 1995, Mulan in 1998, Tarzan in 1999, and Finding Nemo in 2003. All these movies had a common theme to not run away from home. Later, Disney also creates Tinkerbell in 2008, Princess and the Frog in 2009, Tangled in 2010, Brave in 2012, Frozen in 2013, and Moana in 2016, which all had a common theme of female princesses being more empowered and diverse.